The moment Rachel steps into the courtroom, time fractures for Ethan in a way he can't explain. The air feels thinner, like the room has been drained of oxygen, and every sound dulls except the echo of his own heartbeat. His eyes are drawn, unwillingly, to her stomach, rounded, undeniable, alive with a future he was never meant to be part of. His mind scrambles for logic, replaying dates, nights, apologies, arguments. The math refuses to work. Panic rises not as a scream but as a slow, sickening drop in his chest. This isn't just betrayal, it's confirmation. Proof with a pulse. Rachel's hand rests possessively on her belly, not protective but performative, as if she wants him to see exactly what she replaced him with. When her eyes meet his, there's no guilt, only satisfaction. In that instant, Ethan understands the cruelty wasn't accidental. It was planned. Rachel doesn't rush. Every step she takes is measured, deliberate, like she's walking a stage instead of a courtroom floor. She knows the eyes are on her, the clerks, the lawyers, the strangers waiting for their own hearings, and she welcomes it. When she leans toward Ethan, her voice is soft, almost kind, but carefully loud enough to travel. "I hope you're finally ready to let go." The words slice deeper because of how calmly they're delivered. A few heads turn. A woman in the gallery frowns. Someone whispers. Ethan's ears burn as humiliation spreads through him like heat under his skin. He wants to disappear, to fold into himself, but his body refuses to move. Rachel straightens, lips curving faintly, satisfied. This isn't about closure. It's about dominance. About breaking him where witnesses can confirm it happened. As Rachel turns toward the defense table's other side, something unplanned happens, something she didn't rehearse. Her eyes meet Daniel Mercer's. The effect is immediate and violent. Her confident posture collapses as if someone cut her strings. Color drains from her face, leaving her skin pale and tight. Her fingers curl involuntarily against her stomach, no longer decorative, now protective. For half a second, she forgets the room, the audience, even Ethan. Whatever history exists between her and Daniel isn't theoretical. It's alive, heavy, and dangerous. Ethan notices the shift before he understands it. The woman who walked in victorious now looks cornered. Afraid. Daniel doesn't react outwardly, but his stillness is loaded, his gaze steady, knowing. In that silence, power changes hands. Ethan doesn't know why yet, but he knows this fear is real. And it belongs to her. Ethan grew up in a house where silence did more damage than shouting. His parents' divorce was quiet, clinical, and emotionally bloodless. Two adults drifting apart without ever naming the pain they caused each other. As a child, Ethan learned that absence didn't always mean leaving. Sometimes it meant staying and slowly disappearing. He promised himself he would never become his father, present in body, vacant in spirit. When he met Rachel, her intensity felt like warmth. She asked questions, held eye contact, made him feel chosen. At first, their marriage felt like shelter from everything he feared becoming. But over time, her affection came with conditions. Praise turned into correction. Concern became criticism. Ethan didn't notice the shift until his confidence had already eroded. He started apologizing for emotions he couldn't name. By the time he realized safety had become surveillance, he no longer trusted his own judgment. Rachel had always understood the value of appearances. She curated her life the way others curated social media, carefully framed, selectively honest. Ambition wasn't just a trait, it was a hunger. As Ethan grew quieter, she grew sharper, measuring her worth against women with larger houses, louder lives, and men who commanded rooms. Mark Holloway was everything Ethan wasn't allowed to be anymore: confident, affluent, untouchable. Their connection wasn't romantic at first, it was aspirational. Mark made her feel seen in ways Ethan no longer could because she'd trained him not to look too closely. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but Rachel adapted instantly. Crisis became leverage. She didn't panic, she calculated. A child could secure Mark's attention, destabilize Ethan, and rewrite the narrative of victimhood. For Rachel, love had always been transactional. This was just a higher stakes deal. Lily was the only constant Ethan trusted. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every quiet car ride felt like proof that he was present, truly present. He wasn't fighting for custody to punish Rachel or reclaim pride. He was fighting for continuity, for the right to remain a daily reality in his daughter's life. Daniel Mercer understood that immediately. He didn't sell hope or promise miracles. He listened, asked careful questions, took notes that felt heavier than words. His calm wasn't reassuring, it was surgical. In court, Ethan still assumed the system would side with Rachel. Pregnant, composed, narratively compelling. He braced himself to lose weekends, moments, meaning. Sitting at the defense table, he folded Lily's schedule until the paper softened at the edges. Today, he believed, something essential would be taken from him. He just didn't know yet what form that loss would take. Rachel takes the stand like she's stepping into a spotlight she's rehearsed for. Her shoulders slope just enough to suggest fragility, her voice carefully unsteady, cracking only when it serves the story. She speaks of Ethan as if he were a distant memory rather than a man sitting feet away, emotionally unavailable, unpredictable, someone she had to protect herself from. The implication hangs heavy but unsaid, allowing imaginations to do the work for her. When she confirms the pregnancy, her hand settles on her stomach again, a visual anchor for sympathy. She never names blame outright, she lets the silence accuse for her. The judge leans forward, attentive. Pens pause. Heads nod. Ethan watches as the room quietly rearranges itself around her version of events. His presence fades, not because he's absent, but because her performance is louder than his truth. Ethan feels himself shrinking as Rachel speaks, as if each sentence peels another layer of him away. He wants to object, to shout that her version leaves out years of manipulation and quiet cruelty, but the rules of the room trap him in stillness. His silence reads like guilt. That's when Daniel stands. He doesn't rush or raise his voice. He asks permission to approach the witness with a politeness that disarms the room. His tone is even, almost gentle, but there's a precision beneath it that unsettles Rachel. The judge nods. Daniel steps closer, placing himself not between Rachel and Ethan, but between Rachel and her narrative. For the first time, the room stops leaning toward her. Ethan senses it before he understands it. The momentum has shifted, and something sharp is about to surface. Daniel's question lands softly, almost conversational. He asks about Rachel's previous legal name. It's an innocuous inquiry on paper, but Rachel's body betrays her before her words do. She hesitates, just long enough. Her eyes flicker, searching memory, escape, strategy. In that fraction of a second, recognition hits her like a physical blow. She remembers him now. Not as a lawyer, but as a witness to a past she spent years erasing. A courtroom in another city. Another name. Another story sworn under oath. Her breath tightens. The gallery doesn't notice, but Ethan does. He sees the crack form. Daniel doesn't press yet. He lets the silence work, then calmly delivers the line that changes everything. Let's talk about the last time you were under oath, Rachel. The room stills. Her past is no longer buried. Its courtroom grows colder as Daniel begins to unwind Rachel's past with surgical patience. He introduces a civil case from years earlier. Different city, different last name, same woman. Allegations of financial fraud, resolved quietly through settlement, never adjudicated, never erased. Daniel doesn't dramatize it. He doesn't need to. Each document lands like a weight, shifting gravity away from Rachel's carefully built narrative. She loses her cadence, answers too quickly, then backtracks, contradicting details she stated minutes earlier. The confident pauses disappear. Her hands fidget, knuckles whitening as she grips the edge of the stand. Ethan feels the room change again, not dramatically, but decisively. This isn't a public shaming, it's a controlled exposure. The judge's expression tightens, eyes narrowing as patterns emerge. Rachel's story no longer flows. It stumbles. And for the first time, the power is no longer hers to command. About to testify. Daniel's next move is quieter, but far more devastating. Financial records appear, bank statements, property filings, dates highlighted in neat precision. Mark Holloway's name threads through them all. Expensive gifts. Large transfers. A shared investment property purchased while Rachel was still married. The timeline overlaps too cleanly to dismiss. Ethan feels the betrayal deepen, not as a sharp stab, but as a slow, crushing weight. Yet beneath the pain, something unexpected surfaces, relief. The confusion that haunted him for months finally has shape. He wasn't imagining things. He wasn't failing alone. Rachel's mask slips further as her answers grow defensive, irritation bleeding through her carefully curated vulnerability. The judge notices. The room notices. Rachel is no longer the wounded party. She's a woman cornered by her own records. Ethan breathes for what feels like the first time in months. Daniel never raises his voice. He doesn't accuse, insult, or provoke. He simply lets the facts exist, stacked neatly, impossible to ignore. Each question is precise, each answer recorded. The judge calls a recess before the damage becomes irreversible, but it's already done. In the hallway bathroom, Rachel vomits, gripping the sink as her reflection fractures, sweat, fear, anger staring back at her. The performance is over. Ethan watches from a distance, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. He doesn't feel triumph. He feels release. The truth, once terrifying, now feels grounding. Rachel's collapse isn't revenge, it's consequence. As court officers move quietly around them, Ethan realizes something fundamental has shifted. Whatever the outcome, he is no longer invisible. He isn't crazy. And for the first time since the marriage broke, he understands exactly who Rachel is, and who he no longer has to be. The courtroom stills as Daniel speaks, his voice even but weighted with history. He reveals the truth he has guarded for years. Rachel once manipulated a vulnerable client in a separate civil matter, twisting testimony and burying evidence to protect herself. Daniel had uncovered it then, too early, too alone. When he refused to stay silent, he paid for it with a temporary suspension of his license, branded difficult for insisting on truth over convenience. He never forgot her face. When Ethan walked into his office, Daniel recognized Rachel immediately, not as a pregnant wife or grieving mother, but as a pattern. He took the case without theatrics, without warning, knowing time, not force, would expose her. He waited because truth requires patience. As Daniel finishes, the courtroom absorbs the magnitude of sacrifice and intent. This wasn't coincidence. It was accountability arriving late, but fully prepared. Daniel's final evidence lands with devastating precision. Recorded messages reveal Rachel coaching Lily to fear Ethan, subtle manipulations disguised as concern. Texts show coordination, dates, strategies, pressure points. Medical records surface, altered and selectively presented to suggest instability where none existed. The intent is unmistakable, alienation, calculated and sustained. The room tightens as Mark Holloway is confronted. He doesn't defend Rachel, he distances himself. Claims deception. Says he was misled about timelines and intentions. His voice is firm, transactional, and final. Whatever future Rachel imagined dissolves in real time. She reaches for him with her eyes, but is already gone, emotionally, legally, irrevocably. Ethan feels the ache and the relief collide again, but he doesn't move. The truth stands on its own now. Rachel's strategy, once invisible, is fully illuminated, and impossible to deny. Rachel breaks, not theatrically, not strategically, but completely. The tears come without control, her shoulders shaking as the weight of exposure finally lands. This time, no one leans forward in sympathy. The performance is over, and what remains is consequence. The judge's decision follows with clarity and resolve. Primary custody granted to Ethan, supervised visitation maintained, credibility irreparably damaged. The words are firm, unemotional, and final. As the ruling echoes, Rachel looks at Ethan, not with contempt or calculation, but recognition. She sees him now as he truly is, present, grounded, unbreakable. Ethan meets her gaze without anger, without triumph. He doesn't need to prove anything. The chains she tried to bind him with have fallen away. In the quiet after judgment, he feels it fully, freedom. Not from her, but from the fear she once controlled. The ruling doesn't come with drama or raised voices. It arrives in measured language, firm and final. Rachel faces consequences she can't charm or negotiate away. Ongoing legal review tied to her prior fraud case, mandated therapy, and strictly supervised visitation until further notice. There's no outburst, no apology. She sits still, eyes fixed ahead, absorbing the reality that control has slipped beyond her reach. The courtroom empties differently than it filled, quieter, heavier, more honest. Ethan doesn't feel victorious. He feels steadied. Justice, he learns, isn't loud. It's corrective. The system didn't punish Rachel for betrayal. It responded to patterns. Accountability replaces narrative. For the first time, the law sees what Ethan lived with privately for years. As he leaves the courthouse, sunlight feels unfamiliar but real. The world hasn't reset, but it has realigned. And that is enough to breathe again. Rebuilding doesn't look like triumph. It looks like therapy appointments penciled into a calendar, learning to sit with emotions instead of silencing them, and figuring out how to be both gentle and firm at the same time. Parenting alone stretches Ethan in ways fear never did. Some nights are quiet victories, homework finished, dinner burned but eaten anyway. Others are lonely, heavy, unresolved. Daniel meets Ethan once more, not as client and attorney, but as two men closing a chapter. Their conversation is brief, respectful, unceremonious. Daniel admits the case settled something old for him too, a loose end finally tied. No gratitude speeches, just a handshake that carries weight. As Daniel walks away, Ethan realizes strength doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it simply remains, steady and intact, after everything else has fallen apart. Healing arrives in fragments. Lily doesn't suddenly trust the world again, she tests it. Small hands linger longer when Ethan drops her off at school. Bedtime stories are requested twice. Questions come slowly, carefully, as if words might break something. Ethan answers honestly but gently, choosing truth without bitterness. Over time, the fear in her eyes softens. Laughter returns, not all at once, but in flashes. Pancakes on Sunday mornings. Quiet car rides filled with music instead of tension. One evening, as Lily falls asleep with her head on his shoulder, Ethan understands what the fight was really about. Winning would have meant ego. This meant protection. Truth didn't just clear his name, it built a foundation his daughter could stand on. In that realization, empowerment settles in. Not as dominance, but as peace that finally feels earned. 1 year later, the school parking lot hums with ordinary life. Idling cars, teachers waving, children spilling out of doors like released breath. Ethan stands near the curb, sun warm on his face, no longer bracing for impact. When Lily spots him, she drops her backpack and runs, laughing, arms open without hesitation. The collision is pure joy, the kind that erases memory of fear. He lifts her easily now, stronger in ways that have nothing to do with muscle. Her voice tumbles over itself as she talks about spelling tests and playground drama, and he listens, really listens, without scanning the horizon for danger. This is the victory he never imagined asking for, presence without tension. The world feels stable in his hands. For the first time in a long while, the future doesn't feel like something he has to defend against. Across the lot, Rachel stands apart from the noise, half-shadowed by a tree that hasn't fully bloomed. She looks different, not broken, but reduced. Quieter. Smaller. The sharp edges that once commanded rooms have softened into restraint. She watches Lily and Ethan with an expression that isn't anger or envy, but distance. A woman observing the consequences of choices she can't undo. Ethan notices her without tension tightening his chest. He doesn't turn away, and he doesn't approach. There's nothing left to say. The story between them has already concluded in places words can't reach. Rachel's gaze lingers for a moment longer, then drifts elsewhere, as if accepting a boundary she no longer tries to cross. In that silent exchange, Ethan understands something final. Closure doesn't require reconciliation. Sometimes it simply requires space. As Ethan buckles Lily into the car, his thoughts settle with surprising calm. There's no replay of courtrooms, no echo of accusations, no desire to be seen or validated. Hatred would require energy he no longer wants to spend. Triumph would imply a contest that still matters. What remains is peace, quiet, earned, and deeply private. Healing didn't arrive in verdicts or apologies. It came in therapy rooms, late-night talks, and mornings where fear no longer dictated the day. As he closes the car door, Ethan feels the truth land fully formed, not as bitterness but as clarity. Rachel tried to dismantle him where everyone could watch. But restoration never needed an audience. It happened in small, unseen moments that rebuilt him from the inside out. And in that private space, untouched by spectacle, he finally won.